This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant and Pest Geek Podcast for the Living the Wildlife podcast. Always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and or other control methods to manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here. Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. So glad to have you on board. It's been good to get, again, continuing reports from people who are happy with what we're doing here at the Pest Geek podcast, so we're glad to have you along. Today, I'm going to be dealing with a question that was raised by Franklin, my colleague here of the Pest Geek Podcast. He said I should look into this meme that's been on Facebook, don't kill foxes because foxes are not harming your cats. And so he thought that merited some investigation. So I figured, well, that's an interesting question. So let me check it out. So I did. So I did a little bit of research. I didn't do a ton of research, but I certainly did a little, and wanted to basically show you what we had. Do foxes, and by foxes we mean red foxes here. I believe the scientific name is Vulpes vulpes. So, red foxes can be, probably 8 to 10 pounds, maybe 12 pounds, and cats can certainly be anywhere from, probably 5 to 8 pounds, unless you're dealing with like what they call a Maine Coon cat. I've never owned a Maine Coon cat, but I guess they can get kind of big from what I'm told. So, so sometimes a cat can be larger than a fox. So, well, what did I find in terms of my research? Because this is going to be a fairly brief presentation today. I'm involved in a doctoral level program, at least one class anyways, so I'm going to be a little preoccupied for the next 8 weeks, basically, while I'm trying to get through this class on education. So one particular YouTube video that I was able to come across was put out here by Fox Guardians from the UK. The UK has a long-standing love and hate of red foxes, and of course as the culture's changed over there, they seem to be trying to protect them. As you know, the wealthy used to hunt foxes with dogs, and that's been, I think, effectively banned now throughout the UK, and so people are always trying to take these causes of animals, just like here in the U.S. And so the question was from this biologist that do foxes kill cats? And she was referring, and you can certainly view this video yourself. Just look up Fox Myths Busted, Foxes Kill Cats, and that's the video here on YouTube. And she makes a rather compelling case because she said her organization had very basically trail cameras out in the landscape, basically an urbanized landscape, and found that fox and cat interactions, that there were no evidences of predation between the two of them. In fact, in many cases, the cats chased the foxes away. So, and I think she said something well over 100 video recordings of cat and fox encounters. So, again, that's not the U.S., but again, unless you think that foxes in the UK are different than foxes in the United States, it would seem that predation is not really an issue between foxes on cats. And now she did mention that foxes will eat dead cats that have been killed most likely by automobiles, and so foxes will eat carrion. But whether foxes will actively kill cats, they found no evidence. Now, that being said, this is something we have to understand about wildlife, and that is, when we talk, we often refer to things in generalities, right? It's hard to say never, like that a fox will never kill a cat. That's just simply beyond the pale. When we have evidence of, for example, deer eating bird chicks and the like. I saw a video of a cow that ate a baby chicken. So a chick. So that was, and I know I shouldn't have used the word baby there, so please forgive me. But a chick, and just reached down and scarfed it. I mean, it was amazing. I never saw such a thing before in my life. So obviously oddities can certainly occur, but in terms of at least what this lady was saying here in Fox Guardians, that their videos, they found no evidence of this at all. Okay, that's just one source. So are there any others? Well, let's take a look. Let's go to another one. This is a publication. I don't have the reference in terms of where it was actually published, but this is available online. And the title of it is The Diet of the Feral Cat, Felis catus, that's the scientific name for cats, red fox, Vulpes vulpes, and the dog, Canis familiaris, that's the domestic dog, over a 3-year period, that's kind of a long time, at the Wichelina Reserve in arid South Australia. Now understand that Australia and New Zealand have spent an inordinate amount of research and on invasive species, of which the red fox and the domestic cat are feral species in their countries, and they're ravaging their domestic wildlife, and they're very concerned about extinction, which is to their credit, to be sure. And so they really put some serious research into these particular mesopredators. And in this particular article, I found nothing in it that suggested that foxes and cats had any type of predator-prey relationship with each other. Over a 3-year period, you would think something would have come up. Now, what they did find was that there was tremendous dietary overlap between a fox and a cat. In other words, they tended to be choosing the same types of animals in terms of what they were predating on. Not identical, but a significant overlap. And sometimes there were differences seasonally between what they were eating. What they found was that red foxes tended to choose food sources larger than cats, but smaller than dogs. So it was dogs picked bigger prey, foxes picked the next level, then cats picked the smallest prey. So they didn't mention anything about fox predation on cats in this publication. Well, that's only 2 sources, right? So let's go to another one. Well, this is a publication from PLOS One. Notice the date is only 2017, so not very long ago. PLOS One is an open source journal article, so there should be no challenge for you to kind of check up on this if you would like. And so the title of this publication is Mesopredator Management: Effects of Red Fox Control on the Abundance, Diet, and Use of Space by Feral Cats. Now, what's interesting here is that they found, if I can find the mention here, they said, we predicted, this is the abstract, we predicted that the larger fox would dominate the cat in encounters, and used a fox removal experiment to assess whether foxes affect cat abundance, diet, home range, and habitat use. Our results provide little indication that intra-guild, that's just a fancy word meaning competition between the cat and the fox, intra-guild predation occurred, or that cats responded numerically to the fox removal, but suggests that fox affects some aspects of cat resource use. All right, so let's translate that into English. They found no evidence of foxes killing cats. They just didn't find it. So they might have found a little bit of cat food inside of a cat presence inside of a red fox scat, for instance, but it was nothing significant. And certainly could be occasioned by a fox eating a cat that was killed by other means. So the bottom line was, they didn't see anything here about foxes removing cats from the landscape. So here we have another source published in PLOS One, which is a major online scientific journal, and you can look at their data yourself, but the bottom line was they didn't find anything. Now, the challenge, of course, whenever you're using scat research is that sometimes material in scat, when an animal's eating another animal, not everything passes through and can be identified, but certainly there's enough hair on cats that's going to be suitable for identification, so this is probably not going to be an issue that has somehow got missed. The problem with some small prey animals is that they can degrade to such a degree that it can be missed through a scat analysis. It's unlikely that that would happen with cats. You would think that there would be enough hair in the feces and other signs of perhaps some bones that would indicate that there was some presence of cats. And certainly it's hard to think that over time that the cats, that this is, if cats were a consistent food source of foxes, that it wouldn't show up eventually or just even be witnessed of a fox on cat predation event. So here we have a third resource that's telling us fox on cat predation just doesn't really seem to be a thing. Well, let's go to one more source. And this is a publication that came out in 1981. So, the rule of thumb in science is that if it's older than 5 years old, it's not true. I know I'm being a little sarcastic here. This was a criticism I had when I was at the university, that there's sort of a mantra: last 5 years, last 5 years. Is it 5 years old? And so this notion in science that only more recent research is more true than older research, and certainly there are refinements in research, to be sure, but sometimes I think they take this just a little bit too far. But that's a side note that maybe for a talk for another presentation here. What this found was that the food of suburban foxes is what they were looking at, and what they found was there was no real indication of foxes killing cats. So they didn't have anything. At no time of the year, let me read part of the abstract here, did a single food item predominate in the diet of adult foxes. Pastiforms, so it's a type of bird, were the most important single food item on the diet of young cubs, but there was no correlation between the number of pastiforms eaten and their abundance, nor between annual changes in the abundance of small birds and mean birth, litter size, and productivity. Foxes, and I think they were capturing some of these foxes and actually looking at stomach contents, I think was what they were doing here. If I can't see the whole article, I'm just reading the abstract here because I believe it's behind a firewall. But you can see this again, the food of suburban foxes, Vulpes. Vulpes was special reference to London by Stephen Harris, published in 1981 in a journal entitled The Mammal Review. So he didn't mention anything. However, what was interesting in this abstract is he did mention an earlier study that occurred in the city of Bristol, which is also in England. He said a complimentary survey in Bristol on losses of domestic pets to foxes revealed that 7% of pet cats and 80% of other pets kept outdoors were killed in a year. Now you think about, 7%, Stephen, there's your proof that cats predate on foxes. That foxes predate on cats. Well, like I said before, I do think that there's certainly going to be instances where foxes will kill cats. I think that can pretty much well be established. However, the question is it of any significant measure? It's sort of like we have to understand that in nature we have to think about what the majority is. It's sort of like if people are complaining about the 1-watt light bulb in their house costing them money regarding their electrical bill, and yet ignoring the 50-watt floodlight that's burning 24 hours a day, and they're complaining how they're losing money because of the 1-watt light bulb. We have to put our emphasis where it truly belongs. So if the bottom line here, I think, for us as wildlife control operators and for you as pest control operators, if you have clients calling you up and saying, we have too many foxes around here, I'm worried about my cats, the answer should be, people need to keep their cats indoors if they're worried about their cats, and I wish that they would. I've constantly talked about the predation that cats do. If you hate the environment, let your cat outdoors. So that's really the bottom line, and I think about that pretty strongly. The evidence is literally overwhelming. And however, the idea that foxes are a threat to cats that are outdoors doesn't seem to be sufficient evidence to support that. It would appear that cars are a bigger threat to cats outdoors than the fox, the red fox we're referring to. I'm not referring here to the gray fox. So bottom line here is I think we have to be careful how we're selling jobs. Now, if you're in a state where you're allowed to control foxes and a client wants foxes done, you're certainly free to do that. I'm not suggesting that's immoral for you to do that. What I am suggesting that in order for you to do it morally, this is sort of an ethical discussion here, I think you need to inform your client that there's no evidence that any given fox is a threat of predation on domestic cats. Now, are there exceptions? Sure. But what's the likelihood that your client is going to be the specific exception? So it's going to be pretty unlikely. The evidence seems to suggest that it's not really an issue. So we have to be careful what we're selling. Same way if you have a client calling you up and for insects, and they're like, I need to have these insects controlled. And you're saying, well, there's no evidence that this is damaging anything. And that this isn't really a problem. It becomes just a sort of maybe a mental tick on the part of your client. Is it illegal for you to control that insect? Probably no, if you're following the label and you're following the laws in your area. But we have to be careful of sort of exploiting the misguided fears and obsessions of our clients. We have to be careful about how far we go down that rabbit hole. And that's just my suggestion for you here as wildlife control operators. We have to be careful about what we're doing. So in terms of the meme, are red foxes a threat to free-ranging cats outdoors? It doesn't seem to be, at least no more of a threat than cars, which appear to be a greater threat than red foxes. All right, well, thanks for listening today. Again, it's kind of a short one here today, but I hope you found it at least interesting. Definitely subscribe to our podcast. I'd love to hear comments from you about what you would like to hear and criticisms of our particular show. Do take the time to subscribe, and if you're looking to reach out to me, you can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. There's a picture of my home page there. You can certainly reach me through the website as well. Subscribe to my blog. And again, I would love to have your questions about things that are of interest to you in your professional work, so I can help assist you improve your income, your safety, and client satisfaction. Thanks, everyone. Take care.